Okay, so let's talk about Teddy Roosevelt and his big stick. That is the um, topic for today. So we'll start with who was Teddy Roosevelt. He was the 26th president of the United States. Before that, he was vice president. He became president because William McKinley, who was the president before, was shot and killed. And so Teddy Roosevelt took over for him. And he was a very interesting person. He actually was a cowboy for a while. He went out to North Dakota and just was doing the cowboy thing because he thought it was cool, basically. He was a hunter and liked the outdoors. So it was kind of natural. You can go to Theodore Roosevelt National Park out in North Dakota, which is a pretty nice place. He also served in the Spanish American War. He had to get in. When he heard about the Spanish American War, he's like, I got to be there. So he put together a group of soldiers to go and fight in Cuba. And so that he did that, and he did a lot of other things before he became president. He was the police commissioner of New York City and so on. So he had a very full life, and that was his whole thing. His whole thing was to live life to the fullest. Don't waste any time with life. Try to do stuff. He was also a conservationist. We have the national parks and forests because of Theodore Roosevelt. He's the one who got the ball rolling and really championed all those ideas. He was also a progressive, which means that he was for regulation of businesses, breaking up monopolies and stuff like that. So he had a lot of different things going on. He also is the person who basically got the United States to build and own and operate the Panama Canal for a long time. Okay, so let's have a look then at his foreign policy. So we are looking at how Theodore Roosevelt thought we should interact with the rest of the world, in particular, also Latin America. Latin America being anything south of the border, the Caribbean islands, Mexico, and all points south. That is what we'll call Latin America. So his big quote is to speak softly and carry a big stick. You will go far. Right. So his whole philosophy was use diplomacy and talk about certain kinds of things. In fact, he won the Nobel Peace Prize because he helped Russia and Japan to end a war they were fighting with each other. So he had no problems with talking and trying to get peaceful solutions. But if that doesn't work out, you got your stick and you can use that. And as you can see here, he wasn't afraid to use it. And we're going to find a situation now in which Teddy Roosevelt used the big stick for America to get something to benefit itself. Okay. Teddy Roosevelt was definitely an imperialist, which means that he believed that the United States should go out, take over territory, and really dominate other countries that are smaller and perhaps unable to really resist what it is that we can do. Okay, so he was an imperialist for sure, and we will see that in our Panama example. So specifically about the big stick, what does it mean? Well, it means the United States should build a very big military. Okay, that would be the stick. If we have a big stick, that means it's a big military, and in particular the Navy. Uh, if you remember from your vocab, there was a guy by the name of Alfred Mahan, and he wrote a book about sea power, how important it is to have a big navy, to uh, have a country that's powerful. That if you want your country to be truly powerful on a global scale, you need the boats with the guns on them. If you look at Great Britain and France, the way that they were fighting it out between each other in the 1700s and thereabouts, to see which country would have more of the colonies and more overseas reach. Great Britain won that battle. They won that battle because they had the boats. They had better boats. They had more boats. They were better with boats. They were all about the boats. And so Mahan says, if you want to become a powerful world power type country, you got to have boats with guns on them. And Teddy Roosevelt said, yeah, that sounds perfect to me. I totally get it. And I'm going to try to do it. So, in Teddy Roosevelt's time in government, he worked real hard to build a U.S. Navy. And that U.S. Navy was shown to work pretty well in the Spanish War. where the U.S. Navy beat the Spanish Navy really soundly in a few different places. Anyway, his philosophy, Roosevelt's, was that you should be able to use force to get what you want. Doesn't mean you have to do it, but you have to be willing to take that big stick and, to a country. Okay, so that's the big stick. He also came up with something called the Roosevelt Corollary. And I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it's important just to sort of review something. If you remember the Monroe Doctrine, which again is another vocab term, the Monroe Doctrine is this idea by President Monroe a long time previous to Roosevelt that no country from around the world, especially those European countries, should get involved in North or South America. Okay, no European power should try to take over any part of North or South America. So Monroe wanted to say no to anyone who wanted to come in and take over any country in North or South America. And what Roosevelt did was say, great, I like that. We're going to do that too. And but I'm going to add something to it. A corollary is something you throw on in addition to something else. So a corollary he puts on there is that the United States would make sure that Latin American countries paid off European loans. Long story short, Venezuela owed money to Great Britain. Great Britain was going to send a boat with a big gun on it to collect their money. And Teddy Roosevelt said, no. You can't do that. You can't use your guns against the Venezuelans. We'll do it for you. So he's basically saying, Great Britain and other European countries have to stay out of Latin America. And he says to Great Britain, if you got a problem with one of those countries, you come to us, we'll sort it out. So we'll go in there and we'll tell the Venezuelans what's what, and we'll do it instead because we want North and South America to be sort of the United States' sphere of influence is the term that we would use. We want to be the only ones who say what goes on in our neighborhood. So it's like that, and that's the Roosevelt corollary. So you can see it keeps the Monroe Doctrine, but expands it even further. Okay. So the other thing that was happening was a canal in Panama. I don't have a map open, but Panama is, you'll see it in the video here where it is exactly. And so we're going to watch this video in just a second. But basically, if you wanted to, let me see if I can find. Okay. So if you wanted to get around the world, you would have to go all the way down here and around, and that takes a long time. Wouldn't it be great to just go straight this way, right? Or if you want to move something from California to New York on a boat, you got to go all the way up, down, and around. Wouldn't it be great to just be able to cut through? Well, basically, Panama originally you couldn't do it. It was all land here. So the idea was, well, if we just dig a hole here in Panama, we can put boats through it, and that way you can get around this way. So that is what we're talking about when we talk about the Panama Canal. We need to get a canal right here. Similarly with Africa, if you want to get something from France to Japan, in the old days, you'd have to go all the way around Africa like so. Wouldn't it be great if you could just go this way? Well, you can't do it because there's no way through. So they decided to build or dig a hole here. You can actually get through here, the Suez Canal. It's hard to see here, but you can get through there now. So the idea was similar to build a canal in Panama. And okay, so what we're going to do now is, well, before we do that, I'll say that it's important for trade and for the military to be able to move things around very easily. The French were hoping to build the canal. They were trying to make some deals with the governments in that area so that they could be the ones who could build it and operate it. And then it would be kind of like, hey, we got this little piece of America. Teddy Roosevelt, he wanted to basically beat the French to the punch build a canal and operate it so that the French couldn't do it, and we would have the advantage of all that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pause. This video here you will find in the also in this assignment. And what I want you to do is watch this video. And once we do finish watching that video, we'll come back and I'll ask you a question about that video. All right, welcome back. You saw that video, which I think is really good. Now, please answer this question. All right, let's take a look at evaluating Teddy Roosevelt's behavior as a great imperialist, somebody who wants to expand American power, even if that means going to other countries and telling them what to do, going to Venezuela and telling them how they're supposed to pay off their debt to Great Britain, telling Colombia, hey, let us build this canal or else, and then basically breaking a piece of Colombia off and making it into another country, as that video showed you. This kind of thing makes Teddy Roosevelt an imperialist. And what we want to do is look a little bit more into his behavior and try to evaluate it. So let's take a look at a quote from him. I naturally take an interest in it, the canal, because I started it. The Panama Canal wouldn't have been started if I hadn't taken hold of it. And that imagery of just taking hold of it, I did it, I grabbed it, I took Panama, right? I took a trip to the isthmus. That's what this is. If you remember from geography, it's an isthmus. Started the canal and then left Congress not to debate the canal, but to debate me. And in portions of the public press, the debate still goes on as to whether or not I acted properly in getting the canal, right? That's all that stuff with Colombia, right? Did I do the right thing with messing around with Colombia, right? People debated that. But watch what happens. But while the debate goes on, and the canal does too, and they are welcome to debate me as long as they wish, provided that we can go on with the canal now. So when you're looking here at the end, what he's basically saying is like, look, we're doing this thing. You can debate about whether it's morally correct or not, whether it's the right thing to do. What about the rights of the Colombians? What about the rights of the Panamanians? We're doing it anyway. I'm going to grab this thing, I'm going to take it, and I'm going to do it. It's a very imperialist kind of mindset that Roosevelt had, which is to act and to act strongly and to expand power. So with that in mind, please answer this question. Okay, and now what we have here is a political cartoon. And so that's Teddy Roosevelt building the canal or digging the hole, as you can see here. And this Bogota, this is the capital of Colombia. Okay, so just have a look at that and tell me what you think about it. And then finally, here's another Teddy Roosevelt quote that we want to look into. People say that I fomented insurrection in Panama. Fomented means I kind of instigated it, like when two people are about to fight and then one says, go ahead, hit him, right? That's foment. Okay. Insurrection is another thing for like the rebellion, the Panama fighting against Colombia. Insurrection is the rebellion in Panama prior to the time that I became president. While I was president, I kept my foot down on those revolutions so that when the revolution referred to did occur, I did not have to foment it. I simply lifted my foot. So you see what the president is doing. Teddy Roosevelt, he's the president. He said, look, all I did was Panama wanted to fight Colombia, and all I did was stand back and let them do it. Okay, that's it. Now, you saw the video, and does the video agree with President Roosevelt's characterization of his actions? Why is it that you think Teddy Roosevelt is saying it like this, right? Would it be possible for a person to say, well, look, yeah, of course I fomented insurrection. What else was I supposed to do, right? Do you think that anyone would say that just out loud, even if that's true? Why would somebody not want to say it? Why would Teddy Roosevelt want to put it this way and not just sort of out and out say, yeah, of course I fomented insurrection. Of course I did. That's how I got the canal. So think about those things as you answer these questions. And the last thing I want to think about here is whether or not we did the right thing in taking the Panama Canal. And so there are pluses and minuses to the Panama Canal. One thing is the canal benefited the United States a great deal economically. We've made a lot of money from it. So that's great for us. And remember that if you're more on the isolationist side of things, your view is more like if the United States does anything, it should be to benefit us, our own citizens and people and so on. Okay. The world benefited. There's easier transportation around the world. So everyone benefits a little bit from this. Okay. Panama got the canal back, or they were given the canal in 1979. So they've been operating it ever since, for as long as I've been alive. And so they get benefits from it now. So in the long run, Panama did benefit from the canal, or does benefit from it now. And the Panamanians benefited from anti-malarial advances. Malaria was a terrible disease. It still is a terrible disease. And we found that as we were trying to dig this hole in Panama, people were getting malaria like crazy. And the American medical profession worked really hard to find ways to stop malaria from spreading or to keep it contained. And those benefits did spill over into Panama. So like fewer Panamanians got malaria as a result, and the world in some ways improved because now we just know more about how to fight malaria. So these are the sort of benefits that happen from the Panama Canal. And then on the negative side over here, we can look at a few different things. Basically, while the canal thing was going and under U.S. control, Panamanians were not really hired to build the canal or to operate it. Most of the building of the canal came from people from what we call the West Indies or the Caribbean islands. They were hired and sent over to dig the hole. And then, of course, the more higher paying, higher prestige jobs went to Americans. So it's not as if a lot of Panamanians for a very long time were employed working on the canal. So there wasn't a ton of improved economic situation for the Panamanians in the years after the canal got going. And then Panama also did not improve from, if Panama is sort of backed by the United States, they should be able to borrow money more easily and be able to do their government finances more easily. That really didn't happen according to this paper that I was just reading this paper. And that said that it didn't happen. So I just take their word for it. And anyway, a couple other things. Panama had to deal with the fact that they didn't own part of their land. There's this big part of their land that's making tons of money. They don't own it. And for a very long time, the United States just owned and operated it. And as a result of that, Panama, how free and independent can they really be? They became independent of Colombia, sure. But the United States has a huge interest in Panama operating smoothly. And so the United States will always kind of be watching just to make sure that Panama is doing everything okay. Because if something bad happens in Panama, the United States will do whatever it takes to protect that canal. And if that means just taking over Panama for a while, changing governments and leaders and whatever, then that's just what that means. Okay, so the Panamanians had to deal with the fact that they were always being watched and sort of supervised by the United States. So as you think about whether or not we did the right thing with the Panama Canal, you have to balance a few things. What would be like fair treatment for Panamanians, fair treatment of Colombia, as we saw from the video and how that happened. So that sort of idea of what fair treatment means. And on the other hand, you could also look at it with big picture pros and cons. You make a list. Were there more benefits than harms being created here? And you can kind of look at all this holistically and say, well, sure, Panama didn't benefit, in the early days, but, they benefited more in the long run for it. And also the world benefited more in the long run for it. So even if it looks a little ugly, even if it's a little rude or something to deal with countries in these ways, more good than harm comes from it. So it really depends on how you look at the world and what it is that you're after. Are you just trying to evaluate whether treatment was fair or not? Or are you just looking for pros and cons in the long run? That's what I want you to think about as you answer this last question.